Hello students, this video provides an overview of investigative essay writing, including some of the characteristics of that particular type of essay and some guidelines for structuring a typical investigative essay, which you should find helpful as you write your final paper, your investigative essay on the Belize-Guatemala dispute. I trust that you have finished reading the instructions for that paper in the course outline, as well as the sample investigative essay on modal. If not, you'll find a copy of both right below this video. Kindly take the time to read both handouts before proceeding with this video. So let's take a closer look at the sample essay, particularly the choices that the writer made in structuring the essay so that it flows logically and is easy for the readers to move through. Also, what the writer did to ensure that the essay is balanced, giving an equal amount of attention to the both sides of the debate or issue. In addition to the structure, we'll also see how the writer manages to remain neutral or objective, as you are required to do in your investigative essay assignment, except for when you reach your concluding paragraphs. A little note before we move on. Do keep in mind that the sample essay is an actual student's paper, slightly modified for teaching purposes, so you might notice a few areas that can be improved. Be on the alert for those issues so that when you write your own essay, you can avoid those shortcomings. Okay, so looking at the essay, first of all, we see that right from the presentation of the title of her essay or the crafting of the title of her essay, this student ensures that she maintains objectivity or neutrality in deciding on a title for her essay. Hugo Chavez, a hero or a villain. In presenting her essay title in the form of a question, the student avoids indicating her stance or her opinion on this controversy. And so she maintains her neutrality, which you definitely want to do in the presentation of your essay in selecting a title. Secondly, in setting up her essay, the student leads in or begins by presenting some background information. Often we refer to this part of the introductory paragraph as the hook or the contextual information. And so the contextual or background information that the student chooses for her topic on Hugo Chavez is a little bit of background on Chavez himself and his presidency and some of the changes that immediately took place when Chavez became president of Venezuela. So the readers get a little bit of context for the remainder of the essay. And you definitely want to do that, provide some context or background information for your readers. As a part of the context, you will also notice here that the student clearly indicates more or less the two groups or sides, main sides of the controversy. And so she says, he, meaning Chavez, also created animosity with other nations whose rich citizens had investments in Venezuela. Chavez's acts were praised by the poor, who considered him a hero, while the wealthy Venezuelans and other critics abroad despised him, deeming him a villain. So we get a clear sense that we have two main groups of people involved in this controversy, in this debate, i.e. those poor citizens in Venezuela who benefited from his new socialist regime, and those on the other end of the spectrum, the rich Venezuelans and others who criticized his policies, right? And so again, in setting up your essay, you definitely want to clearly indicate the two main sides of the debate. Good. And then to round off her introductory paragraph, of course, the writer presents the statement of purpose. Ordinarily, we would refer to this element of the essay as a thesis, but since it is not an argumentative essay, but rather an expository essay, the student presents a clear statement of the purpose or main aim of the essay. And so she says, and again, she puts this in the form of a question: was Chavez a hero or a villain? And again, presenting her statement of purpose in the form of a question not only gives the reader the indication of what her main intention in the essay is, i.e., to explore the answer to this question, but notice that once more the writer maintains a neutral stance. We do not know whether this student is in support of Chavez or against him. Good. And again, that's something you want to emulate in order to maintain an objective, neutral stance in your essay. Good. And so we move on to the body of the essay. And here we notice that the student clearly indicates, using the topic sentence of her first body paragraph, which side of the debate on Hugo Chavez she is going to deal with first in her essay. And so this topic sentence reads: today, critics of Chavismo, the term popularly used to refer to Chavez's socialist policies, continue to criticize him harshly. And so the word critics here, strategically located in her first topic sentence, indicates that she's going to be discussing the critics, or the opinions of the critics in this debate. Good? And so notice now when we move on to the second body paragraph, she's continuing to discuss the opinions of Chavez's critics. And we know this because she uses the word similarly as a transitional device, signaling that she's continuing to discuss similar opinions about Chavez, i.e. she's continuing on the side of the opinions of the critics. And again, in the third body paragraph, likewise, another signal transitional word also lets the readers know that she's continuing to discuss the critical views on Chavez. Good. And now when we move on before we move on to the next body paragraph, just want to point out that the organizational strategy that the student is using here by presenting in one block of paragraphs the perspectives on one side of the issue, we refer to this as a block organization. And it's a commonly used organizational strategy when, for example, we're writing a comparative contrast essay. You want to deal with all of the one block of ideas, similar ideas or one perspective. You can present that in one single block of paragraphs, as the student has done here. An alternative to the block paragraph, which you can use if you wish, is to present a critical perspective in one body paragraph, and then in the following paragraph, a perspective that's the opposite, right, from someone or a group that is in favor of Chavez. And then you move to another critical perspective, and then a favorable perspective, in and out in that manner. That's another option that you can choose, but this student chooses what I think is the easier option, that is the block format. So now when we move on to the second half of the body of your essay, we see a second block being set up, where now she's going to deal with, in another 3 consecutive body paragraphs, the perspectives of those on the other side of the debate, those who are against Chavez's policies. So then you see that, again, she uses the topic sentence at the beginning of this body paragraph, her fourth body paragraph, to clearly indicate that she is switching sides. She's switching to the other side of the debate, that is, when she says, while there are those who strongly condemn Chavez as a villain, that is, there are others who say he was a hero. And so now we know that she is going to switch over to the other side of the debate in her essay, which is a very good signaling to help the reader to follow the flow of her ideas. Good. And so, of course, when we look at the other two body paragraphs, we'll see that she is dedicating those paragraphs to discussing the opinions of those who are in favor of Chavez. Good. And now we come to the conclusion of the essay. And again, another helpful signal she uses at the beginning of the concluding paragraph to indicate that she is wrapping up. She's about to wrap up. And so she says, kind of echoing the sentence or the statement at the end of her introductory paragraph, she says, it is clear that President Hugo Chavez was a polarizing public figure, right? So we know she's about to wrap things up. And then she goes on to say, it is impossible to say whether he was a hero or a villain, for it seems that as many people condemn his actions as praise them. Both in his country and around the world, people differ in their perspectives on his legacy. So she is sort of synthesizing the information that she presented in the body of her paper and kind of answering the question, was Chavez a hero or a villain? She's answering that question based on the perspectives or the opinions that she reviewed or presented in the body of her essay. You will notice, though, that this is one area in the essay that could definitely use further development, because her discussing or synthesizing of the information from the body of the essay is rather skimpy, is rather sketchy. She very well might have elaborated more on things that are observed when you look more closely at the perspectives on the two sides of the debate. She might have, for example, made some connections between the different groups of people who are critics of Chavez. For example, she mentioned in the body of the essay that we have economists and human rights activists and different types or categories of Chavez critics. She might have made some observations about some commonalities among those critics of Chavez. And so, think about this when you do come to this portion of your essay, and be sure to have a more extensive, a more insightful discussion of the findings. Good? And then finally, in wrapping up her essay, she does a pretty good job of, bringing her essay to a closure by placing it into a broader context. That part, I think, is pretty effective when she says, let's go back to a part of her summation. Both in his country and around the world, people differ in their perspectives on his legacy. Now she's saying, but isn't that true about just about every political leader throughout human history? From Fidel Castro to Abraham Lincoln to the mythical King Gilgamesh. it is impossible for a political leader to escape the ire of some, even as they enjoy the admiration of others. So she's kind of placing this historical figure, this Hugo Chavez, within the context of a broader discourse, in the context of other political leaders, in other historical periods who have faced similar challenges. So this is a good way of ending any essay, really, by broadening the scope as a strategy for concluding. So there we have it. Look at the sample essay to see some options for structuring the essay and for maintaining objectivity as your assignment requires.